What a week it's been. Not only did 5 developers from Australia manage to crash pretty much every single video game platform with the release of their game, but other games that people had already written off as dead have reached all-time player peaks. And somehow, despite it being potentially the biggest video game launch ever, I guess we're gonna have to go ask GTA 5 on that one. We're just gonna claim that, it's an indie anomaly. Oh, it's just super hyped. Everybody was expecting Silksong. Of course this was going to happen, but indie games don't cause this sort of reaction. I can hear the CEOs telling their shareholders all the way from down here. But even if they want to ignore it, there is an actual question to be asked. Is Hollow Knight just an exception? Is Silksong just a 1 in a million thing? Or is it a harbinger of the future of the industry? Well, the answer to that question is very simple. Yes and no. It's a little bit more complicated, but look, not every indie game can be Silksong. Not every indie game can literally crash every single sales platform regarding video games. But a lot of games can be made by smaller teams with tons of passion, sold at a reasonable price, and then make way too much money. The only reason we don't get more of that is because, well, other publishers don't want to. Because, no, at this point, we really need to stop and evaluate. We really need to outwardly acknowledge that the next big video game that's going to take over the internet and have millions of people fawning over it won't be the same AAA bloated slop that nobody asked for. It's going to be some indie game made with passion by a small group of developers that just wanted to make something fun. And we can now, very much with statistics, with data, say that. No, this isn't some pie-in-the-sky AAA bad indie good video. This is a video about how the only language that a lot of the executives speak, being money says that the next big thing will be a small thing. The real question then is, when will they realize this as well? And has anyone that actually holds a lot of money thought about it or given a shit? If we start looking at the most recent successful games, the ones that have truly broken into the mainstream, stratospheric numbers, think of the last 2 years. Games that have been a big deal, how many of those have been those big AAA Slopfests? Where have you seen the breaking news of topping the Steam charts by games? Sure, you're always gonna have some live service shooters up there, but aside from that, think about it. Baldur's Gate 3, Palworld, Peak, Repo, Expedition 33, Split Fiction. And now we're seeing a 10-year-old game that has fulfilled a lot of its potential because the developers just won't stop updating it, and No Man's Sky and Silksong. When you think of the big AAA ones, what's managed to crack that? Monster Hunter Wilds, just to have a lot of its audience reject a lot of what it's done. Battlefield 6 is the closest that I can think of that's really had a very positive reception, and that was in its open beta, so, jury's still out. How many times does something have to happen when people say it's an anomaly for it to become the norm? How many times does this need to happen before the other developers out there, before the big publishers realize that it doesn't matter if what they want is to make a good video game, to make a sustainable video game that's going to make money back, or to make too much money off of something? The solution isn't what they've been doing. And that isn't just me saying it. That is where the money says it is. If you're looking to be successful, it turns out that your best bet is to give players something that they want, something that a lot of these indie teams have been tapping into, making things that they want to play, and it just so happens that then other people want to play it too. It's this revolutionary concept. So what is the shift that's happening right now in the gaming industry? Why is this data telling us that the best bet you can do now is to bet on originality, on new IP, on something that's never been done before? Why does the data say that smaller teams that have actual passion behind their projects find more success? Well, there's a lot of stuff there to dig into, and I think it's worth doing so, hoping that more of the big publishers catch on to it, and then we can have more and better video games. I just want more people to be happy instead of more people to be subjected to the stupid ideas that a lot of people believe is going to make them personally the most money. We're gonna dig into that, and since I'm talking so much about what I want, hi, I'm Mug. It's nice to see you. If you're new here, welcome. And if you're not new here, welcome back. It's great to see you. You are looking dapper. And by the way, if you like the video at any point, remember to hit the like button because that does help the video spread through YouTube and have it reach more people. I think that they're also implementing some other dumb systems, but I refuse to sit here and say, haha, boys and girls, make sure to hype the video if you like it. Remember to hit subscribble. Can we make it to 50,000 likes? I'm sure we can. Next week, I'm gonna mod my cows in Minecraft. I'm sorry. Oof. Please support independent essays like this, and if you like what I do, maybe by the end of the video, consider subscribing, if you think it's worth your time. Anyways, there's a lot to talk about. Let's get into it. All right, we're gonna try and make this as fun as possible and as easy as possible for the publishers and developers out there to understand. Now, even though some of these things are self-evident to us, the customers, they need some help with it. So we're going to try and break it down. To all of the big publishers out there that are now looking at Silksong and wondering, why are they so successful? Where's my success? Well, we're about to educate you. So I've broken it down into 3 easy to understand points that we're gonna go through. The first one is that, hey guys, profit is revenue minus cost. And I know that everybody likes to talk about revenue, that's the juicy number, but they seem to forget about cost. So we're gonna have to look at that. The second one is that the game you're trying to make, you already made it. We've already played it, we don't want to play it again, and we don't want to pay for it again. If we got tired of the game the first time, why do you think we wouldn't get tired the second time? And the third one is, competition is fierce, and it seems like you guys just don't know how to read the room. So we're gonna help you with that. But don't worry, there are more chapters in each of them, and they're all marked down below so that you can check back if you need to refresh your notes or anything. So let's start at the beginning. Boy, does it matter for them to make money. A lot of money, especially if they're a publicly traded company, because then they don't have to make money just to survive. They need to make enough money to make people who only want money happy. By the way, take a shot every time I say money in this video and I will be accused of homicide. So really, it is very simple. While most companies are looking to make the highest revenue possible, they seem to be forgetting cost. And cost is a really big component of the profit equation. Turns out that teams like Team Cherry, with only about 5 people credited in the credits, specifically if we want to count the additional programming by Huile, just I guess that's all they needed to make Silksong. Everything after that aren't even necessarily contractors on the game. It's stuff like localization or instruments for the OST. This is really still a very small team of people that are using the money from the success of the first game to make the soundtrack more beautiful. Wow. Can you guys feel the greed? But even though that's at an extreme with a game like Silksong, it's apparent in so many other games recently as well. Expedition 33, famously made by approximately 33 people, if we're counting the dog, Monoko. Look at Monoko, he's a good boy. Peak is a joint project made for fun by 2 studios that you probably know, being Aggro Crab, which made Another Crab's Treasure most recently, and Landfall, which you know from Cluster Truck and also recently Haste. Palworld, while being on the higher end of the spectrum, is still a relatively small team at the time of making that game of around 40 developers. And sure, Baldur's Gate 3 might have been made by a huge team, but also a completely independent team that didn't have to answer to anybody except their players. One of the easiest ways to make the final number of profit in the equation higher is to make the costs lower. Less developers, less oversight, less red tape. The obsession with having bigger teams make bigger games that have more playtime and more features and better looking textures, and look how good this God Array looks in 4K. We need upscaling technology to even make it run on a 5090. Also means that you have to sell more and at a higher price in order to make all of that money back. And because you're investing so much money into this project, because oh Lord, what do we do if the strands of hair on this character aren't true to life using NVIDIA's latest tech, means that you can't take risks. And it makes sense. Why would you take risks on this large amount of money? Look, if I'm looking to try out a new pizza place and they're selling me a pizza for $12, and sure, it sounds a bit weird, a bit strange, but it's $12, and at the end of the day, I'm still gonna get food. I'll try it. But if they're selling me some cauliflower dough pizza covered in Nutella for $57, I'm not buying it. And we experience that as customers, but they experience that as well as developers. If you're pumping 400 million into the budget, you can't take risks and be experimental. You want to keep it as palatable as possible, as known a quantity as you can for the customer at the end of the day. The problem is the customer is tired, because we've gone from serving pizza that tasted good and was at least a little bit interesting into serving stale bread with moldy cheese on top. We've somehow gone from AAA games being Domino's pizza, completely acceptable. It's a known quantity, but you know, you still want it from time to time. And suddenly, they're Lunchly. The fact that they don't realize that and aren't willing to change it is a problem, and it starts with the elevated costs. They are backing themselves into a corner by demanding these production values, these huge teams, and these huge budgets. Budgets that often take into account not just how much money needs to be made to make the shareholders happy, but exorbitant bonuses for people at the top and terrible working conditions for the people at the bottom. And that's if you're lucky enough not to get replaced by AI. Now look, it would make sense for these companies to play it safe if all of the things that those costs bring were things that we wanted. You see, customers wanting the product is kind of an essential part of it being successful. And customers aren't really clamoring for the best looking graphics in the world. They are no longer clamoring for 120-hour RPGs. The people who play games has changed over the years. The people who played Assassin's Creed 1 and thought it was short no longer want the latest Assassin's Creed to be 180 hours, because most of those people have jobs if AI hasn't replaced them. And it's normal. Things change over time, just like we do. And the failure of these companies to adapt to those changes and give us, their customers, what we actually want is apparent in their failures. The easiest way to start finding out what it is that we actually want, which, to be fair, sometimes we don't even know, is as simple as reducing cost and allowing yourself to take more risks. Now, I never come empty-handed with these examples, because then people will say, oh, it's so easy, just claim these things from your chair. But, I mean, we have two recent examples. Look at Koei Tecmo trying to think a bit outside the box and hiring the Game Kitchen to make Ninja Gaiden Ragebound. Or Sega bringing on Lizard Cube to make Shinobi Art of Vengeance. Why are these two ninja games? Yo, what's up with all the great ninja games? Maybe that should be a video. Square Enix has done a pretty decent job with their entire 2D HD line. Technically, I guess we could somehow give EA a W by funding and publishing for Hazelight, I guess. Although that deal is like, it makes it very clear that they have strict creative control. The point is, those are examples that there are plenty of ways to try and experiment and do something new, even with established IP, or, careful with this, experiment with new IP, good job Capcom with things like Kunitsugami, looking for something new. Also, bonus lesson, If one of your games doesn't do that well because you failed to market it correctly, that doesn't mean you have to give up. Yes, I am talking about Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown, a great game, a fantastic Metroidvania. I've heard those are really popular right now, that Ubisoft did not know how to market. And for some godforsaken reason, their response to it was, oh, this great game didn't sell well, let's pump out 3 new NFT projects in 2025.
And now, a special episode of Trivia with Mug.
By the way, did you guys know that one of Ubisoft's most successful games ever is actually Hungry Shark on mobile? I discovered that recently. And to be fair, they're kind of fun. I think that they just publish it. They don't really... Anyways, keep costs down. That helps with everything else. All right, we've played your damn game before. Stop making the same game. I think it's really funny that that little quote of what is the definition of insanity, which just in case is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. But a lot of people in the gaming space associate it to Voss from Far Cry 3. They did the same game again 3 more times. That might have been a bit harsh. I have a soft spot for some of Far Cry, all right? Funnily enough, I think that we've gone far enough that people want Far Cry 7 now. But then you remember that Ubisoft's making it. I'm not saying that people don't want more of the same. We do. Sometimes something's really good and you just want more of it. It's not that complicated. But it does get complicated when instead of feeling like you're adding something to it, you're just trying to get people to pay for it again. We've already dealt with the sequelitis of the world many times over. We're on Call of Duty 26. And while for a long time it's been true that it was a better idea to just do something established that you knew people were going to like, or competing directly against something in the same sphere, you know, your Medal of Honors to your Call of Duties, your Battlefield. Things have changed quite a lot. Should we like rewind to the part of the video where I was like, oh look, all the biggest successes are actually not that? As gaming has ballooned with everything we talked about in chapter 1, you can't really afford to chase the trend just to get middling results. But if you're chasing the trend and just doing the same game again, how would you expect anything but the same results as the last one, maybe a bit lower? I mean, it's not like that's just common knowledge for anybody who's ever studied anything regarding economy. It really comes down to the fact that we, as customers, as gamers, have played a lot of games, and we already know what we like and what we don't, and we'd rather stick with what we like than take a gamble on something that is just the same game but with a different name for no reason, or we want to try something new. The obsession with repetition and somehow thinking that on the 5th, 6th, or 7th release, things will be better is completely crazy. When on the other side, we have very interesting examples of still trying to utilize the strength of an IP while trying to inject it with originality. Look at Final Fantasy. Oh no, somebody's gonna say that Final Fantasy 16 is really bad. Well, the point is, at least all of them are different. You could look at something like Resident Evil, which, hey, every single one of them is different from the last. Even now, with how different 7 and 8 are, being in first person and 8 being a kind of homage to 4, but then we had 4 Remake. Wait, we haven't even spoken about remakes! Yes, when I'm talking about making the same game again, I'm not just talking about slapping the next number and somehow expecting it'll do better. No, I'm also talking about the obsession with remakes. And I'm not saying that remakes are bad. I'm just saying there are very good ways of doing them and very bad ones. You see, in the spectrum of Final Fantasy VII Rebirth to Metal Gear Solid Delta, there is a lot in between. Sure, some remake projects basically fulfill a vision or give an interesting twist to the point that you are offering people not just nostalgia, but something new, something that feels fresh, like an interesting twist on a familiar flavor. Sometimes that pans out, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it's the greatest cocktail you've ever had, and sometimes it's a bit of pineapple on your pepperoni pizza. Why does pizza keep showing up in this video? It's almost like I scripted it that way. But the fact is that a lot of people believe that just slapping a new coat of paint, sometimes a bad one, on something that already existed and shoving it out the door is a valid way of making money. Sometimes charging way too much for that coat of paint, even if it does come with a lot of love and reverence. I'm sorry, Metal Gear Solid Delta. I love you. I just wish you didn't crash. To some degree, you need to give people a reason to want to play your game. And it's like this other game, but maybe worse, is not a good reason. The way that big video games in the AAA space have devolved into just the strangest combinations of it's kind of like these other 4 games, but a bit worse than all of them, is part of the reason that those projects fail. There are only so many times in a single cozy direct that we can hear that a game has gathering, crafting, and building. Eventually, they all turn into the same thing. Look, cozy bros, I love me some farming just as much as you do, but you got to admit that it's getting a little bit out of hand. We start to get so many different things all becoming this mush, and somehow the only thing that the big publishers can think of to invest their money is, let's do that, but bigger and better with more explosions and shinier graphics and making sure that our developers never sleep. Giving people a valid reason to be excited for your game can be something that's completely new, a fresh new mechanic, or maybe sometimes it's just quality. Taking something that other people have attempted many times before, but have failed at capturing. Deadlock. Sometimes it's just combining things that people didn't even know they wanted. What's that? Daemon Ex Machina Titanic Scion is Anthem plus Armored Core 6? Yes, please. Sorry to bring them up again, but Landfall said, what if Sonic the Hedgehog was a roguelite? And that worked out great. It doesn't need to be the next PvPvE survival extraction looter shooter with sci-fi elements and episodic narratives. It can go from, we did this, but better, to, hey, what about something a bit different? Underappreciated. What if we just take this topic and evolve it a little bit more? That's what sequels used to be, by the way. They used to be, what if we do something cool and new with the same concept? And somehow we've turned that into slop. Hey, here's a brand new camo to grind in the new Call of Duty. This time we did the thing we did 10 years ago. Isn't it new now because we haven't done it in 10 years? When the biggest selling point for Battlefield 6 is that it feels like older Battlefields, don't you feel like you fielded a bit too far? Have we not strayed from the path? So get it through the shareholder's head or something. We don't want the same game again, because we already have the games, and I don't care. Nobody's taking them away from us. Stop killing games. And there was a third point. I'm not looking at my notes. On top of all of this, competition is fierce, and that competition is getting really spicy. You see, these lessons that I've been talking about, we're learning them from the winners. We have already seen how other smaller teams or publishers who have had a keen eye on this are taking advantage of it. We see them lowering those costs. We see them trying something new or finding a way to do something better than it's ever been done before. And they are reaping the rewards. The thing is, because their costs are lower and because they are making a splash when they arrive, they can also afford to charge less. How are you supposed to compete when every day there's gonna be a new indie upstart and there's gonna be a new publisher hunting them down that want to do what the big franchise does, but better? That are trying to take advantage of how stale some genres or some niches in the market have become, and they're going to try and actually bring something fresh to it, and then on top of that, they're going to charge you $30, $20, versus the competition's aiming for $90. And this isn't just about the prices of games and how that market now being the complete shit show that it is, without us even knowing what is the price of a video game, what is the value to price ratio anymore. It goes beyond that. Fierce competition also means that I don't care about Warzone if I've put 600 hours into Apex Legends. I don't care about League of Legends because I don't care about League of Legends. I don't care about the slop when there's people offering me something better at a lower price. And if you don't adapt to that, you will die. It takes small indie teams actually trying to do something new. A fraction of the sales of Assassin's Creed Shadows that will never be divulged because Ubisoft is slightly ashamed of them, to make more than Assassin's Creed Shadows because they have everything else under control. That's called building a sustainable business. I'm available for consulting, Guillermo. Call me when we've outdone GameSpot in subscribers. By the way, guys, we're only like 5.8 million subscribers away. Let's get that done. There is no way that you can expect to be profitable when there are better alternatives on the market that have everything that you don't. They have development teams that are transparent and looking to make something that players actually want to play. They are charging less money for it. They are putting actual effort and passion into creating something that is unique enough for people to care. And somehow, you want to ignore all of that and pretend that because you're attached to a huge IP, you can charge $90 for the same thing that you've been charging $70 and before that $60. Game development isn't now limited to the biggest bidder. You don't need a huge publisher to finance, to bankroll hundreds upon hundreds of developers just to get the shiny graphics anymore. Now, we live in a time where anybody can pick up a laptop and start developing their own games, where small studios can find success that the big guys only dream of. If you don't wake up and do something with what you have, with your valuable IP, if you don't use them, or at least let other studios willing to take risks use them, you will be eaten. There will be people out there that have grown up on these games, love them and want more of them, willing to do a better job without the bloated budgets, without the oversight, without the shareholders. They'll do it even if they have mistakes along the way, with passion and a keen eye for creativity that you just can't afford to have. They say that you either adapt or die, and for far too long, we've seen a lot of what the video game industry is not have to adhere to that rule. Is Silksong the game that proves that AAA is dead? No. Silksong is the game that proves that people really wanted to play the sequel to Hollow Knight. What matters is why people wanted to play it. It's because they believed that the tiny team over at Team Cherry were going to deliver something that they wanted to play. And maybe one day, heck, maybe even if they listened to some of my advice, AAA will get back to that. I've been Mug. Thank you so much for watching. The fact that you did means everything to me. An extra special thanks to the members up on the wall, be they patrons or members here on YouTube who directly support everything I do day in and day out. I hope that somehow this video has proven to you that video games are just banging, man. They're just on the way up, and we can only expect better and better games from here. Very often that's what competition breeds, but often it's also just straight passion from people wanting to make great things. Share them with the world. Never forget that. So go out there, enjoy some great video games, and I'll see you again very soon.